Hi everyone, it's so lovely to have you back here. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about relationships. I think this is certainly a topic that we can all relate to, and this is something that I have learned a lot about, and these are just some of the things that I wish that I had known about years ago. And this doesn't necessarily have to relate to a romantic relationship. I think it could. I think that's where we have a lot of growth, in those romantic relationships. But it could also just be relationships with friends, relationships with family, which is also a great testing ground, learning ground, challenging ground. So this is general advice about relating to other human beings. And of course, it goes without saying that I think no one is ever an expert on relationships with other human beings. I think that's what ultimately we're here to master in this body, in this form. And so there's always going to be more learning and more growth. And certainly I know that I will probably watch this video in a year's time, or even 6 months time, or even 2 months time, and be like, oh my God, like everything has changed since then again. I've learned even more. So I think it's just worth remembering that no one has got this nailed. We all struggle in different ways with relationships in our lives, whether that's with a partner, a romantic partner, whether that's with family members or friends. You know, when you put two human beings together, it's not going to be perfect, because you have all the messy, beautiful mess that comes along with being a human being when you have people interacting with each other. So today I just want to share with you some of the things that have helped me, things that I have definitely learned as spiritual life lessons along the way and have helped me to grow. And ultimately the takeaway message from this video is exactly that relationships in whatever form, they challenge us, they help us to grow, and they are really our learning ground as human beings. And so whatever form the relationship is at the moment that you're looking to develop, to grow, to nurture, hopefully these tips will help you to truly show up in that relationship and be who you authentically are, in order to find that thing that we're all looking for, which is unconditional love. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder to hit like on this video if you're enjoying my content, and also hit subscribe if you haven't already. It means the world to me. So starting from that point of unconditional love, let's start right there. So I think the reason that we often struggle in these kind of relationships and put barriers around ourselves is because we're not loving and nurturing ourselves enough. This is certainly a lesson that I have learned time and time again, that when I'm lashing out at other people around me and when I'm frustrated, it's often because I actually need to turn inwards, and it's to do with what's going on in here. I'm just pretending that it's what's got to do with what's going on out there. I'm pretending that the socks on the floor are the problem. Preach. But actually the socks on the floor wouldn't bother me if I was sorted out inside. So I think finding that unconditional love for yourself and working on yourself first and foremost is a really great way to help your other relationships nourish and flourish, you know, because I think we can't give what we don't have. If we don't have love for ourselves, if our cup is not full, then we don't have enough to give to others, and we can't possibly expect to know how to love someone else truly, completely and unconditionally unless we do the same for us. Of course, that's easier said than done, but I know for me this is a constant learning process, and it will continue to be a constant learning process. But I think one of the things that helps me is just checking in on myself. So when I find myself getting frustrated or lashing out or anything like that, just to check in, take myself away, you know, do a meditation, do one of the things that I do to reground myself and just reconnect, whether that's going into nature or meditating, anything like that, you know, just to find out if it's something happening with me first of all, before I start taking it out on another person who happens to be near me, in whatever relationship form that takes. And showing up in relationships, carrying this unconditional love that you cultivate within yourself, or that you continue to cultivate within yourself, enables you to allow that other person, whatever form they're taking, whether it's a romantic relationship or otherwise, to be flawed and to be imperfect, because just as you are perfect in your imperfection, they are too. So you're much less likely to lash out at them for their perceived imperfections if you are better at accepting those within yourself. And this isn't, of course, about just being like some emotionless slack. that is scared to feel any kind of emotion. That's not what I'm saying. It's just finding that balance between loving that person and putting them on a pedestal so high that they can never, ever, ever possibly achieve what you think of them. And so every time they do something, you're disappointed, and every time they do something, you're mad at them, you know. That's not nice for them either, and it's not nice for you. So it's finding that balance between not putting them on that pedestal so high, but also not being some emotionless thing that doesn't have any feelings. That's not, you know, that's not what I mean at all. So that when they do put a foot out of line, which they will do because they're human and it's some kind of relationship and there's two humans involved, then you're not going to fly off the handle. You know, it's not a big deal. You can work through it together and communicate your needs and figure out what the next step is. And the book that I'm always going on about, A Course in Miracles, explains this. A Course in Miracles Made Easy, that is, because A Course in Miracles is like a really fat, like big book. A Course in Miracles Made Easy explains this as like holy relationships versus special relationships. So they go into great detail about, you know, a special relationship is where you really need something from someone else, and someone can really take a really high fall from grace from that pedestal if they do something wrong, or a perceived wrong that they've done to you, all of a sudden it turns into hate really, really quickly. So you want to try and move away from that and move into a holy relationship, which is where that you love one another regardless of what's going on. Even if that means that you have to go different ways, you still love one another and respect each other and hold that space of unconditional love for one another, and that's more towards a holy relationship. So I'd highly recommend reading that as well, because that was super, super helpful for me. So if we can show up as a whole and complete individual that doesn't need anything from anyone else, that is where the beauty lies in relationships, particularly in romantic relationships. Because I think that we often fall into a trap of feeling like that person will fulfill a need that we can't fulfill ourselves, or it will fill a void in our lives in whatever form that's taking. And if we go into a relationship in that way, we're going to lose out, because the only person that can fill that is you. You are the only person that can be everything that you need and be everything that you could ever want, because you know what's going on inside of you. Other people don't. Expecting someone else to fill that void within you is just gonna lead down a path of confusion and hurt. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think we all have to do that and go through that in order to learn and to grow, but I think that's where we consistently find ourselves making the same mistakes, is if we're looking for something externally when we should be looking within. And if we just think about it practically, you know, if I wake up and I do all my spiritual things, that basically is my coping mechanism of being a human being in the world, I am better in my life. I show up better, I show up complete, I'm less likely to be irrational and get annoyed and get mad at things, you know, because if I do that work, I show up to life trying to be of service. I'm not looking for something from someone else. I'm already complete, I'm already sorted. So it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing throughout the day, because if I've got my shit together, then I don't need them to do any particular thing. So it's important to remember that in all relationships, you are perfect as you are. You are a whole, complete individual. You don't need anything from anyone else, and you don't require anyone else to do a particular thing for you in order to be happy. Now that's a really, really difficult thing to actually do in practice. Of course, the people that we're in relationships with are the people that are closest to us, the people that are gonna annoy us the most and be around us the most. So that isn't always easy to do in practice, but it certainly helps to remember that if you are a whole, complete person that doesn't need anyone to do anything, technically that thing that they are refusing to do, or that thing that annoys you that they keep doing, isn't stopping you from being happy. You are a happy, complete individual just as you are. Now, obviously, that's kind of impractical. You kind of think, well, I do need them to do something. I need them to take the bins out. And it annoys me if they don't take the bins out or whatever. And I guess it's just shifting from you would like them to do that, but also it doesn't mean you're not going to love them if they don't. And I think this is where this unconditional love comes in. It means that that person has space to be flawed. That person has space to be a human being and not be perfect, because you're not perfect either. And through that, you can come back to that place of unconditional love. You can keep your inner peace in those situations that can so easily escalate into something that is a big argument, a big thing, you know. If you just keep that inner peace and remember that you don't need that person to do a particular thing, you're already happy, you're already complete, it's a bit easier. Of course, this doesn't mean that if you're unhappy, consistently, if someone is being horrible consistently, I'm not talking about that. I think obviously that's a completely different situation. What I'm talking about is in a loving and otherwise lovely relationship, these small things can so easily get on top of us and turn into big things and throw us off center and throw us off balance, and what we think is stealing our peace, when really nothing can steal that. That has to come from you, that has to come from within. Also remembering that, as I say, that other person isn't perfect. They're gonna make mistakes, they're gonna mess up once in a while. They're not a perfect model that's just shown up for you complete. They do have to have their own learning, they will have to go through their own processes of growth, and you're the partner that they've chosen to do that with. So if you can find a way there to be of service and provide that unconditional love, that's the hard stuff we're talking about, and that's how you get into that really deep connection in a relationship. And this is where we find that relationships, and again, like I would say, particularly romantic relationships, really do flourish, because if we can fully, truly show up for that person, show them unconditional love, and just hold that space for them to work through whatever they're working through, that's when things can really blossom, because you're just there as a passenger. You're not there looking for something, you're not there ready to take offense at the slightest thing, and you're not there to get something for yourself. You're just there to listen, to hold space, to support them, to help them to grow. And in doing that, that's how we grow, and that's the beauty of the universal law. What we give and what we create space for, we get back in return. There's been plenty of times in my life and in my relationship where I've definitely shown up and I could have got offended and could have run away and could have hid, but I had this thought in my head of stay here, be of service, put yourself to the side. Don't let ego win in that situation, just be present, be of service, see that person how God, whatever higher power you relate to, see them how that higher power sees them, as perfect, whole and complete. And that means that if someone wants to have a difficult conversation about their feelings, or, trying to communicate a need to you, you don't just shut it down and take offense and be like, oh, well, yeah, well, you say that, but I've got to do this, and last week you didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. You can just be present, listen, and make them be heard, not just feel heard, but genuinely hear what they're trying to say. And through that, again, you can navigate those challenges together and work through that together, and you'll both be in a much better place because of it. And ego has a lot to answer for in relationships, I think. So ego is obviously something that isn't necessarily bad. We all need our ego to do stuff. And again, I will reference the book that I'm always talking about, A Course in Miracles, A Course in Miracles Made Easy. That goes into this in a whole load of detail, and it completely changed my perspective on ego, what it means, and all that kind of stuff. So I'd definitely say read that. But in relationships, ego comes into play quite a lot. Ego likes to be in control. Ego likes to be right. In relationships, these two things are very, very difficult to keep hold of, and you're going to very quickly lose your peace if that is the aim and that is your goal. The ego wants us to think that if he or she just becomes X, or if he or she just becomes whatever, and if he or she just did this, then you'd be happy. This is ego's game. Happiness is always one step out of reach. It's always just one more thing that we don't have right now that means that it's going to be this thing that we're chasing. And it's not so. Happiness is in the present moment. It's within you. It's something you cultivate within yourself. It's something that you choose. So in those kind of situations, it's easy to feel like that person is the source of the unhappiness, and actually it's an internal job that we need to be working on. Another thing that I think we have to do, which is really, really, really difficult, and that's really where the hard work comes into play, is letting go of the idea that you really, really need to hold on to that person as well. And that's really, really tricky. If you feel like you need to control the other person and you will do anything to keep hold of them, you will change yourself, you will alter who you are, this is dangerous territory, because ultimately we have to accept that we can't keep hold of someone forever, always, if it's not meant to be. You're not meant to be with that person. You will go in different directions, and that is okay. I think we have a lot of fear around this in relationships, and generally the media and the general kind of noise of the world says that that's a really bad thing and we should be terrified of that, and it's terrible if someone, breaks your heart, whatever. Obviously that's not nice, but it's also something that we need to work on getting over. If we can get over that fear and let go of the fact that that would be the worst thing in the world, that actually that would still be okay too, and as much as it would hurt and be painful, that's okay, because you're two complete human beings and you'll be fine. You'll go on to the next amazing, wonderful thing in your life, with or without a partner. So I think that also comes into play. So letting go around the fears that we feel in relationships as well, I think is also really helpful to free yourself up and show up in that unconditional space of love. In doing this then, in showing up with unconditional love for ourselves and for another human being, we give relationships the space to breathe and to be what they are, which is to enhance our life in some way. And that is ultimately what we want from a partner, from other relationships with other people. We want it to raise us up and enhance our life in some way. So if we can show up not being the problem, we're much better equipped to deal with any things that come up throughout the way, and they're gonna come up because, as I said before, relationships are this training ground. It's where we learn the most about ourselves. It's where we are really challenged, but it's where the most beautiful things happen as well. You know, it's like anything in life. You have to put work into relationships in any form if you want them to grow and if you want them to be nourished, because it's just like any other thing. If you want to go off and learn how to do something or start a new project, you want to give it time, you want to give it energy, and it's the same with a relationship as well. So putting that work in and doing this inner work and trying to work through all this stuff will benefit yourself and your relationship as well. So when challenges come up, which they will, it means that you can work through that together. You can honour each other throughout that process. You can use honesty and communicate your needs and your feelings throughout all of that. It's not about shying away from those challenges and those problems, because they will come in some form, because as we said before, two human beings, you've got imperfection coming out in whatever source. So when these things do arise, then you are better equipped to deal with them and you can navigate that together. I think as well, one of the challenges that we can often have in these kind of spaces is that one of you feels like you're doing all the work and the other one doesn't even know that you're doing all of this inner work. And that's certainly sometimes how it feels, that you can feel like you're bothering to do all this inner work, you're showing up, you're doing the hard work, you're seeing them as perfect, you're making an effort to do all these things, blah, 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 and they're not doing anything. They're just benefiting from all your hard work. The bottom line of that is, it will be better for both of you as a result. That person will soon learn very, very quickly that if you're showing up like that for them, they will and should do the same thing for you. So that if you need to have, a difficult conversation with them and communicating your needs, they too will act how you have been and listen and really be there with you and hold space for you, because that's what you did for them. So you may find that it just takes one of you to break that cycle and to do this, and that's all it takes. It just gets into a nice rhythm then. And that's certainly what I have found. I'm the one that's reading all the spiritual books and doing all that kind of thing, but we both benefit from it because I'm able to show up better in the relationship, and that other person then learns through you and follows also what you're doing as well. Finally then, just practically what this actually means and I've spoken before about how I actually put this into practice, which is like stepping out and being like, no, you will stay, you will put your ego aside, you will be of service, and actually having that internal conversation with yourself, which I would recommend. But another thing I would recommend as well is when you wake up, just committing and making a promise to yourself to see that other person, whoever they are, through God's eyes or whatever higher power you relate to, just see them for just one day. For just one day, see them as perfect and see how things will change and see how things will alter. Because if you just make that promise for one day, it can significantly shift things back into balance. If you're trying to work through something or if you're feeling particularly challenged by something, just seeing that other person as complete as they are, no changes required. You don't wish they were any other way. You don't wish that they would do anything differently, because you're happy as you are and you accept them truly, fully and completely as they are right now. That's also a great way to just start practicing this unconditional love a bit more and bringing it more into your relationship in a practical way. I would highly recommend reading A Course in Miracles Made Easy. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there around relationships, which I found so incredibly helpful for my life. And there's another book as well by Melanie Joy, which is called Beyond Communication, I think. I'll check. So that is a really fantastic book, again, about communicating your needs and communicating your feelings without putting the blame and the judgment on another person, which is just a really, really amazing book to read. And again, I found that really, really helpful. I could go on and on and on about this for a very long time, but I think I'll stop there for today. Obviously, I think I'll come back to this at some point in the future, another topic. So if you have any challenges, tips, anything like that, pop them in the comments below and we'll definitely loop back around to this topic again because there is so much to say on this topic. As always, thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. It's been lovely to sit with you and work through this stuff with you, and I hope that you found it helpful. Please do like this video if you found it helpful. It helps me figure out what's working and what people want to see, and also please hit subscribe if you haven't already. It does make a huge difference to my channel, so it would be great if you could hit subscribe if you're enjoying this content too. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.